Scrawny with the skinny. Fantasyland, you're back for more. Can't blame you. It's time. It's time to talk about the Paris Major. I was waiting for the pick'ems to come out so that I could do my pick'em YouTube video before my fantasy for it, because I want to talk about which teams, etc. But it looks like Valve are doing things on their own time. And so, without further ado, here's the fantasy for the first stage of the Blast Paris Major. Before we get into it, the big plays, the big moments, we've got to talk about the big failure that was my Brazy Party draft. Even with Favin getting replaced by Prosis last second, I decided to commit to the Crimbo Keto situation. And even though 2 of the 5 players on my team were knocked out within the group stage, this bad boy still finished top 26%. We take those. I want you guys to see this. 50 booster points. 69 on the rolls. Even though I lost 2 players early, I finagled a little bit, I swindled here and there, and I ended up walking away with a 26% finish, which puts me still in the top 10. We're hanging on. We are the immovable object. We are the consistency of the HLTV fantasy leaderboard, and now striking distance all the way up to Haka. I can see him, all right? He used to be soaring up above the rest of us, but now looking very much mortal. Only 10 points between me and Vu, therefore me and top 5. I'm looking for the top 5 finish this season. Anything above that is just, icing on the cake. And if I get knocked out of top 10, stop watching Fantasyland. By the end of the season, okay? We can make that deal, you and I. Paris, gentlemen. Paris, it is time. The Blast TV Paris Major 2023 Challenger stage, where we've got, I love majors because you get all these teams that I personally don't otherwise really get to watch all too often. And in this event specifically, I think we're really dealing with some teams like that. We're talking the Gamer Legions, Apex, a little bit of Monty, Mongols, majors. There's nothing like it. Swiss stage, BO1, it's just... the stakes are higher. The coverage is higher. This is where certain players and certain teams are going to write their story to close out CSGO. And there's some pretty poetic elements to that and this competition and this event. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am. It's right around the corner. Starts very soon. Incredibly stoked. I don't want to talk about teams and who I think are necessarily going to go into the stage all too much, because keep your eyes on this YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing my pick'em videos for the first time ever. I've never gotten less than a gold coin, for the record. So, and we play, you'll see. All right, when we get into the team talks, it's a different story. So all I really want to share with you guys right now is what I expect will happen in the opening 3 rounds. Obviously, with fantasy, you're always going for players on teams that are going to win. You can get away with certain individuals on less winning teams if they're that. You know how fantasy works at this point. I'm going through the motions, but you just want to know the answers. I get it, okay? But remember, you know best. So if you see anything here that you disagree with, don't get all hot and bothered. Take it down to the comments. Talk that shit. I think FaZe beat Monty. Pain destroy Fluxo. G2 over Mongols. Complexity beat Gamer Legion. Greyhound take a loss. Apex take a loss. I think the real opening games in terms of upset or just unknowingness is kind of Ninjas versus m0nesy. But with how good the Ninjas have looked right now, I think if you look at their recent losses, it's just versus teams like Heroic, Vitality, Navi, very respectable losses. They're definitely putting themselves back towards the tail end of top 10. And I think that Ninjas versus m0nesy is an interesting matchup, the same way OG versus m0nesy is. Some of the individuals of OG look fire. Nico's slotting in. I personally don't trust OG to close games. We saw that in round 30 of map 3 of the Brazy Party, which was a crazy event. One of these online events that has somehow left a mark on this community. It's Brazy. And second round, I will say there's a little uncertainty here for me between FaZe and Monty. I think this best of 1, because Monty are the highest seeded team at this stage of the major, FaZe in a best of 1 could be the hardest matchup that Monty end up getting, right? Let's say Monty win that. They're dealing with what I expect to be a complexity. They could be looking at 4s in a best of 3 in order to get forward. The format is literally created to get the highest seeded team through to the next stage with the easiest possible path. that belongs to m0nesy. Are you telling me a team that has the individual star on the level of b0ros, a team who is playing above any of their previous kind of performances and expectations in this most recent month, are you going to write off m0nesy? I don't think you should. When Aurora and One Win and those guys got eliminated from the RMR, m0nesy stood above the rest. m0nesy have impressive victories, and I think that this is a team, again, in a best of one versus phase, you got to keep your eyes on. Barring that, I expect G2 to have a good time. I expect Liquid to have a good time, although they could start slow. You guys know Liquid. I've been burned by that twice already this season of Fantasy. It's not going to happen a third time. Ninjas I rate highly. Fours I rate highly. I think that OG and m0nesy are towards the tail end of who you'd expect to get through, and that they could ultimately get replaced by the Mongols, potentially by Apex if they really have as good of a game as a lot of the European teams are saying. Apex is a team that apparently in practice is playing above what you'd expect of them, and even though individually I think they have a pretty low floor, the upset here or there, good seed here or there, you never know, right? That's the beauty of the Swiss groups. That's the beauty of the major format. Crazy things can happen. So here are my opening 3 rounds. You can pause the video and go over it if you want. I don't want to talk anything beyond that. I'm saving that for my pick'ems video. Let's draft, baby. Straight up into it, okay? I'm going to tell you guys right out the gate what my philosophy is for this draft on this event, okay? We're getting to the tail end of the fantasy season. I believe there's 6 events left, give or take 1 or 2. And honestly, now at this point with where I'm at, we've got to take a couple risks, but it's calculated risks, okay? I went big on the m0nesy Rio situation. That burned me. Big in Brazy Party kind of burned me. Even though we're getting these top 26, 35% finishes, I need to get a top 5 or more in order to finish where I want this season. And so I'm going to be taking some little tweaks and jabs here and there, all right? You're not going to see these coming. I am basing this draft entirely on the form of certain individuals in the last month. There are 3 players that I want each and every one of you to draft for this event, and then the difference will be your last 2. The duo at the end is open to any kind of conversation. Those are the 2 players maybe you guys talk about down below, but this core 3 players, if you choose these core 3 players, you will have the best fantasy event of your season. No promises, no guarantees, no money back. Who am I talking about? Who comes to mind when you think about players within this event that have had a phenomenal last month? And for a couple of these guys, it goes beyond that last month. But right out the gate, okay, we can come back to the favorites of G2, arguably FaZe, Slow Liquid. Maybe you like m0nesy because n0nerds is back on LAN, m0nesy. Like, I'm down to the OGs, and we're still kind of like, there's shakiness to each and every one of these rosters. Maybe I would say less so for G2 than anybody else. But you know FaZe don't look great. If it wasn't for the Americas region losing one of their spots at this major, FaZe wouldn't even be here. Let that sink in. Liquid, slow starts, m0nesy, inconsistencies, m0nesy, inconsistencies, OG, inability to close, Ninjas, looking better than they have in the first part of 2023. They're definitely getting back to where they should be. Fours, yeah, you like fours, don't you? So do I. I like fours because their floor in Jerry and Crad can have actual maps. Both of those players are capable of top fragging. Resalt turns out to be the real deal. He is trying to compete with Shalfie in terms of the #1 rifler on this team. And while all of those pieces are kind of, we have Zorte. $209,000 is a reasonable pick for Zorte, somebody who is currently sitting at a 1.19 rating in the last month. This is somebody who dominated as the highest rated player of ESL Pro League in the group stage of that event. He has not fallen off whatsoever, and because of his opping, you're getting easy roll points. Zorte is the reason fours win games. Fours have a solid seed. Fours will make it to the next stage of the major. I believe that. You go back to their RMR performance. Yes, they had a shaky start in the best of ones, but they got there. They beated the teams they needed to in order to qualify. That will happen again. Zorte is one of the 3 key players to the challenger stage in Paris. Now, up next, Pain. good pro league, but we've seen some fall off. They aren't who they were just 1 month ago. Complexity. They just went to Melbourne and lost. Monty? We'll come back to that. Mongols, Greyhound. There's not teams here that inspire you because it's not the legend stage. This isn't. These are the teams who have either been shaky lately and will get to the next stage, or the underdogs who have to prove it versus the favorites of FaZe, G2, Liquid, etc. And so when I'm looking back at this and we're looking at recent form and we're yaddy-yaddying, I'm stopping on Ninjas. I think that one individual on this team who has had a huge step up in recency is Config, now priced $195. Config is the guy. He is 1.11 rating over the last month. He had a very good showing in Rio, the second highest rated player on Ninjas after Head Trick, and you know what Config can deliver, right? You know Config can top frag. You know Config can take over games. That is just simple truths. I speak truths when it comes to talking about Config. And so I think you guys need to give him some consideration, especially at that price tag. You'll see, sometimes we get to the tail end of drafts and I'm like, who do you want to spend 185? This is not one of those situations. You're going to have cash in your back pocket because my third surefire pick is the budget bargain of the event. This player is so incredibly priced for what you're going to get from him. And I know you're going to have some hesitancy. I know there's going to be that voice in the back of your head that doesn't trust me. But trust me. In this case, you don't know best. We're talking about Monty. And right away when you talk about Monty, you think about Boros. And then maybe you think about SDY because you remember him from Navi. And then maybe you think about Waro 2K because he was supposed to be this next star opper. But somebody you do not talk about is DemQQ. 187,000. That's on par with Snappy, with Fiku, and I want you to check out this guy's stats. 1.13 rating in the last month. When you look at his matches specifically as well, there are some online games here where he is just farming. In the last week alone, in fact today, posting huge numbers versus Arcadia, All-Stars, Apex, obviously an attendee of this stage of the major, Havu, EG, Nexus. These teams are teams they should be beating, and they are. He is not the star. 187K, and he is putting up these types of ratings versus them. Yes, the game versus Heat and Astralis talent could take away from that. That's fine. If those two things balance each other out, I take you back to his RMR performance. Ents, Green, Cloud9, 1.32. Excellent series versus Heroic. Excellent series versus Heroic. Now we're talking about the top tier teams in Counter-Strike at this moment. And his worst pap there, okay, yeah, they got smoked by Vitality. That brings it back immensely. But for what you were paying and what you were going to have left to spend, I'm telling you, this is the pick. So we've got the core three players that I think every single person should draft at the Challenger stage. I don't always speak with such confidence, but this time I am. Zorte, Config, DemQQ, DemQQs, DemQT, whatever it is. These are the three, man. These are the three. And that leaves you with $409,000. Now, the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you damn well please. In fact, you could do something like a m0nesy Hooksy. All right, I told you guys as of late, I'm not in on these super expensive in-game leaders. And personally, that is still my opinion. But if you look at the most drafted players for this event, Hooksy is straight up number one. 7,500 people, 75% of the teams that have been created for this fantasy event include Hooksy. I'm not somebody who believes in Hooksy. But if every other team that's getting drafted is also going to experience essentially the same negatives or positives that Hooksy's bringing, you might as well go for it, because at least then you're within the pack and the difference will be decided based on your other four players. That extra bit of money that Hooksy also brings in is what allows for you to go for something crazy like taking m0nesy, the Kid Prodigy. Double G2, I think, is the safest bet within all of these teams at the Challenger stage. I think you could argue that maybe like Liquid and, FaZe are right there, but I think we can all agree those are steps behind. So I'm going to keep the last two very clean and concise for the moment. This is the draft. These are the clerics. Clerics, yeah, a little bit of witchcraft, but at the same time, the clean kind. All right? Main op for Zorte, headshot on Config, support for DemQ, multi-fragger m0nesy, leader on Hooksy. All should be good here in the roles. It's excellent activation. And again, I think those last two players, I just went for the quick pick, double G2. Nice and easy. But that's where your arguments, I think, really come through, all right? The core of Zorte Config DemQ give you a lot of affordability. You can go for a 230K star plus somebody like Hooksy. If you don't want to run the risk on a low IGL, then I bring you to a team like this. You give off m0nesy, okay, drop it, and you can get Hunter at 214. Opens up Liquid and OC at 194. Very reasonable, I think, for somebody who I think is still pretty underrated from the international scene. I don't know. Maybe I look at OC with rose-tinted glasses because I'm from NA, but watch OC power up as the event goes on. I think there's a slight risk in picking Liquid at the start of an event because that's just been the tail of the tape for them all year long. It's slow starts Liquid after slow starts Liquid. So a little warning with this one. And again, will Hunter get kind of lost in the bottom of the scoreboards when guys like Nico and m0nesy are possibly popping off? Yes, absolutely. So a little riskier, I think, to not have m0nesy when you can grab him. And again, Hooksy is safe because everybody picked him. Don't touch Kerrigan, all right? That's a straight up warning. Do not touch Kerrigan. He is having a horrible month. And so is JKS. Even though JKS is one of the more reasonably priced G2 players, and even though when G2 had that run of success, tail end 22 into the start of this year, he was up there and performing, his most recent month has not been inspiring. His RMR performance was not inspiring. And I think there's a lot of people picking JKS and Rain at the moment that could actually get burned by that decision. I think staying away from those two individuals, Kerrigan and JKS, should set you apart from the pack, even if you do tap in with the Hooksy play, etc., etc. So Zorte Config, DemQ, Hunter, OC, if you don't like the Hooksy pick, but again, I'm telling you, it's free. You're safe. No one will hurt you here. And if you really want to get crazy, if you really, really want to play the format, somebody pick this, and if you finish top 1%, you owe me a beer. Boros. Boros is kind of scary. Godlike performances, all right? This is somebody who could truly be one for the future. I think he just turned 19 years old. I mean, he's still very much a kid. And we've been watching him on Endpoint over the last couple years, developing and getting better and better, and now it seems to be coming together. He just got in at the tail end of the CSGO majors. This could be a big one for Boros and for Monty. And again, it's the fact that they are starting this stage of the major as the best seed. It is designed for Monty to win, and if Monty are going to win, it will be off the back of Boros. It's because I got burned with the double Mouse pick in Rio. I got burned with the double Big pick in Brazy Party. That's why I'm not personally leaning into this. I just don't believe it enough. I've got the whimsical intelligence to pick it out of the jungly overgrowth that is this fantasy, but I ain't committing to Boros, man. I'm not that crazy. So for me, this is my team. The Clerics, Zorte Config, DemQ, that's the has to have, followed by the m0nesy Hooksy pick. Maybe I lean into Liquid with the Hunter and OC. You guys check my Twitter right before the event goes live to find out who I lock in. Link in the comments below. Talk shit in the comments below. And remember to have fun, guys. It's the last CSGO major around the corner. It's about damn time. See you guys in Paris.